Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes and VCRs and video rental stores? Is the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? If you want to go back to school, back to the future, or even back to the beach, then the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast is for you. I'm Tim Williams, the creator and host, and on each episode, I'm joined by a guest co-host as we revisit a different 80s flick to discuss our first-time watch memories, iconic scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories along the way. New episodes drop every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast.
Happy holidays, everybody, and welcome to this Moving Panels one-shot. We hope you had a great Christmas and that you're going to go straight in with a positive attitude into the new year of 2022. And we're just going to take a moment in this one-shot, well, I'm going to take a moment and talk about things that happened for us on this podcast in 2021 and what's coming forward for us in the year of 2022. So in 2021, we of course kicked the year off by moving to Mondays. This podcast originally started off on Fridays. We decided to move to Mondays, give you a little bit more of an opportunity to listen throughout the week on your commute to work, and hopefully that has worked out better for you. We of course then started kicking out some new episodes. We got even a theme month, March Madness. We went all Justice League for the entire month of March, including a lead up to Zack Snyder's Justice League, which was a epic event and great for us to cover. We got 4 of our hosts talking about it, and it was just a great time. You can also look forward to another March Madness, which I'll get into a little bit later on in this one shot. Disney Plus started their great Marvel MCU television shows. We had WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we had What If, we've had Loki, we've had Hawkeye, which just recently ended. All great. We've talked about them on the show. I'm sure they'll continue to be a part of discussion as we continue into Phase 4 of the MCU. Speaking of Marvel, they opened up a multiverse. We got our first glimpse of a form of a multiverse in Spider-Man No Way Home. No spoilers here. I won't talk about it. We may have a discussion and another one shot about our thoughts on it, but we'll let people keep seeing it who haven't already saw it. And if you haven't, you need to go see it. And of course, that's leading us into Doctor Strange 2 and the Multiverse of Madness. And this is where we're very excited to see what might be in store for the MCU with this multiverse. But hey, Marvel isn't the only one inching their way towards a multiverse. DC announced the Flash movie. We know they're doing Flashpoint, and we've already gotten a teaser. We got it at DC Fandom, which I did a one-shot on, and we got to see Michael Keaton. Well, we didn't fully see him, but we heard his voice. We got a nice little back of the cowl head. We've also gotten word very recently that Michael Keaton's Batman will be appearing in the Batgirl movie that is coming to HBO Max. So excited about all of that. Multiverse just makes this, to me, it'll fix a lot of plot holes. It'll fix a lot of the mergers that are happening within Disney, with Marvel and Fox. Hopefully with DC, it will allow us to kind of restart, but not completely have to change everything. I'm still rooting for Henry Cavill to get another crack at Superman, but we will see. Also in 2021, I got to not only have great episodes with some of my usual guest hosts and co-hosts, but I also got to do a really shocked me. This is probably one of my most favorite moments of doing this podcast. I got to talk with TikToker Props to History, and it was a treat getting to talk to him. It wasn't the greatest of audio quality. I was still learning at that point, but it was great that he was willing to do that. His fame is skyrocketing. He's got a television show coming to YouTube in 2022, so please check that out. If you don't follow him on TikTok, I mean, are you really a movie buff if you haven't seen him? I'm sure the algorithm has made it happen before, but check out Props to History. He's even got his own podcast, so check that out as well. And of course, in 2021, the Moving Panels podcast completed our first year of being a podcast, and I was very excited to do that, and was very excited to have an episode where my co-host talked about how much the podcast has meant to them over this past year. So that's all exciting, but let's move forward. 2021's coming to an end. You're listening to this episode. This is the week leading into New Year's. And so let's talk about what's coming in 2022 for Moving Panels. We're going to have some great conversations about some not so great movies. We're going to do X-Men Origins Wolverine and The New Mutants pretty soon, so make sure you check those out. Of course, in February, I'll do another Valentine's episode with my wonderful wife, Bethany. We might have to tweak things a little bit as to how we decide, but it'll be a great little discussion for us. March Madness, as I talked about earlier, we're going to theme the entire month of March around one source, and this year it's going to be Swamp Thing. The original movie, I believe, is reaching an anniversary, and so we're going to talk about the original Swamp Thing movie. We're going to talk about the return of Swamp Thing, the sequel. We're going to talk about the cartoon that many of you who are roughly my age probably remember watching. And we'll talk about both the 90s television show as well as the most recent television show that was part of the DC Universe app, which eventually moved itself onto CW, and I'm not 100% sure whether it's on HBO Max yet, but I do think you can still find it on the CW app. So we're going to talk about Swamp Thing and how it works as a television show, as a cartoon, and of course, the movies themselves. In June, that kind of became this past year our month to do anniversaries, and this year right now, we have planned to do Conan the Barbarian and Men in Black, two very rarely known as comic book movies, but very exciting for those to reach a milestone in the year of 2022, and we are going to look forward to talking about those. Speaking of anniversaries, in July, we should be hitting our 50th full-length episode. Now, I know I've had more than 50 episodes because I release an episode every week, but if you're only counting the full review episodes, we will hit number 50 this summer. And the plan right now is to get a roundtable discussion, just like we did with the Zack Snyder Justice League, to get a roundtable discussion of a bunch of my co-hosts with me discussing the movie that probably really put the nail in to solidify the superhero genre, and that was 2012's The Avengers. So we're looking forward to that, and we hope that you enjoy everything that we have coming in 2022. Obviously, things will change schedule-wise and whatnot, but please join us. Please be with us. We're excited to look forward to all that we have coming. Speaking of supporting, please go out and support our fellow podcasts, those that are part of this podcast, as well as those who are just friends of the podcast. James Brooks, who is a one-time guest host, although I'm hoping to have him back very soon, has just started his own podcast called Interview with a Horror Virgin. It's a very interesting concept. So what James does is James picks a horror movie and then finds someone who has never seen it. James then interviews them before they see it, has them watch the movie for the first time, and then interviews them after they see it. It's a great concept. He's had me on as a guest, and hopefully our episode will air soon. But check that out. It just kicked off, so he's got a few episodes out there. But again, it's Interview with a Horror Virgin with James Brooks. Also, of course, I mean, we mention it all the time. He's a, very frequent co-host, but go out and support Tim Williams and the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. People our age are always nostalgic for the 80s movies, and he does a great job with his research, with his trivia, with his information, with his discussions. It is truly a passion project for him. You can tell it's something that he loves. I've gotten to be a guest host for that. My wife Bethany has gotten to be a guest host for that. And of course, you hear Tim all the time on Moving Panels as a guest host. And he's a great person to discuss movies with. And so check out the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. I also want to mention some friends of the show, although I've never gotten the pleasure of having any of their hosts on Moving Panels. I do want to support our fellow friend podcast, Totally Rad Christmas, in which Jerry D discussed things from the 80s that we truly enjoyed during Christmas, whether they be movies, the amazing television shows, video games, all that greatness that came out of being a child and Christmas morning and the things you desired for Christmas during the 80s. I also want to point out the podcast Pop Culture Roulette, in which three friends sit down and just discuss whatever might be on their head at the time, which they deem to be pop culture. Very interesting podcast, so check those out. Of course, you can find all these podcasts wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you find Moving Panels. Just give them a search. Again, Interview with a Horror Virgin, the 80s Flick Flashback podcast, Totally Rad Christmas, and Pop Culture Roulette. We're kind of starting our own little network here, and we hope that you find all of our shows entertaining. Please reach out to us. Please let us know what you think. I'm excited to see what else we've got in store. I know that Blake and I just did a watch-along, and I'm hoping we'll get to do another one. So let us know. Give us your suggestions. Of course, you can reach out to us at Moving Panels on social media. Email us, movingpanels@gmail.com, and just continue listening. But I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. You guys have a great holiday. Happy New Year. I look forward to seeing you in 2022. And for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
What's up, dudes? I'm Jerry D of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, books, fashion, and fads.
If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, he's got it covered. Wait, is there a lot of things to talk about for the 80s and Christmas?
Well, you got the movie giants like Christmas Vacation, Scrooged, and A Christmas Story. There are TV specials like Muppet Family Christmas, Claymation Christmas Celebration, and a Garfield Christmas special.
Plus classics shown every year.
You also jam out to Last Christmas, Do They Know It's Christmas, and Christmas in Hollis. But most of all, it was a time for the most bodacious, best-selling Christmas toys ever, like He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers,
and Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yes, them too. We cover them all, plus much more, including standard segments like Hap Hap Happiest Memory, Gag Me with the Spoon, The Other Half of the Battle,
and Chant with the Littles.
So tune in to Totally Rad Christmas everywhere you get your podcasts. Turn the clock back and dive into those warm and fuzzy memories.
Later, dudes.
What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Well, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from three nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.